Thanks, David. I think I'll jump right in and thank you for the opportunity to be able to give this opening remarks. And I'd like to say good morning to all the participants within the summit. I think as you had aptly put in terms of the theme of the summit was amplifying youth voices for health. And what I've chosen to focus on really is that bit about amplifying, but also linking it with transformative leadership, which was one of the common themes that people asked and they said they expected to hear. So who is Newton? I think you've said pretty much about it. I was born a couple of decades ago, so I'm glad to say I'm probably just a few years older than just a youth. Grew up in Kericho, went to Moi High School, Kabarak, and thereafter School of Pharmacy at the Kenya Medical Training College. And then I pursued a postgraduate degree in marketing and later a master's with a major in entrepreneurship at the Management College of South Africa, graduating in 2015. I've been in the pharma industry for 20 years, so it's really a pleasure to be able to speak to the youth today and to share my few thoughts in terms of what I really feel would be something we need to consider. And maybe to sort of start this off, I think one of the things that we tend to take for granted a lot is where we are in terms of the stages of life. I don't know if any of our participants is familiar with what we call the life rainbow. We tend to use this, especially in mentorship, to remind you that life is not stagnant, or if anything, time doesn't remain still. Most of us don't realize it, but by the time we really start the apex of our youth, which tends to be about the age of 25 to 44, it's when you are at your most optimal age, and your sort of graph starts to descend from the time you get to 50. But you can clearly see here, we talk about the decline tending to happen from about 65. The main message I want the participants to get out of this particular slide is you need to consider that you have a certain time within which you can really be able to achieve the most that you want to in your life. And when you don't realize that, you're more likely to be able to waste that time. And we will see later in the slides that there's nothing as bad as a wasted time. Of course, a number of factors are going to determine what you will do in life. There's environmental determinants, the labor market, employment practices, of course, what you're studying now, what you have studied, what you have graduated, and then there are what we call situational determinants, historical, socioeconomic factors will play a critical role. But I think what we'll be talking today is that personal determinants, the psychological and biological, what we tend to call especially nature and nurture. And I hope that at the end of my very short presentation, I can be able to challenge the youth that are in this session today to really look at what they can be able to drive themselves in shaping the life and determining what they want to be. So as I said, the clock is ticking. Everybody that is here today is already, most likely above 25. And as I said, the time really moves very fast. Your most productive time in life starts at about the age of 25, as I said, to about 50 or 55 years. And that is really when you can make the most of your life. And if you look at the graph that I've put there, I think as youth, sometimes I say we because I was a youth a couple of years ago, but we tend to think that there's so much time. After all, we are the ones that really push that principle of YOLO. But the truth about YOLO is that it's, yes, on one end, it's true that you do live life once, but that life is so short. And if you don't make the best of it, especially during your most productive years, you are unlikely to really be able to optimize. So where are you today? And what exactly are you doing to be able to optimize the time that you have, considering that every day you wake up, you're down 24 hours. That's how life goes. Which brings me to what I'd like to really challenge often our participants. Do you really have a roadmap for your life? And the first thing that we tend to ask is that where you are now, are you clear about your purpose and mission in life? When you look at 5 to 10 years from today, what are you doing to position yourself for success? What do you need to set a strong foundation in order to be able to make the most impact? And if you're very clear about what you're doing to position yourself, so what progress, or where are you as far as these milestones are concerned? And can you be able to visualize that? And if you even think further beyond that, in 20 to 30 years time, how will your blueprint, your mission and purpose be at that particular time? As your graph begins to start to drop, will you have been able to achieve what you set out to do? That's extremely important. And of course, I guess in the sunset years of your life, are you clear about the legacy that you'll be leaving and what you will want to be remembered for? Now, where we are today as a youth might not be something that it looks very serious to think about, but I can tell you time moves very fast. And it was only probably a few years back, I was 25, like I'm saying. I know some of our participants may be, or 26, you might be 27, you might be 30, you might be 32. The point is that you are already halfway through your journey or getting closer to that. And have you begun to appreciate, that you need to consider and evaluate where you are versus where you really wanted to be? That's a very important aspect, which brings me then to, I think, a very key point that we also would need to challenge ourselves as participants. What is your purpose, your why in life, and what is your mission in life? Why do you wake up every day in the morning? What exactly do you intend to be able to achieve? What motivates and what drives you? And when it comes to the mission, what exactly is your blueprint and what do you intend to achieve? Are we clear about these two things? Our purpose, which is our why, and our mission in life? Or are we merely, the way we normally say a river flows, you're only going, of course, with the grain? Are you merely following everybody else? And if you are to be asked at any one particular time, are you very clear about what your purpose is? Now, why do we need to be clear about our why? Our why, as I have repeatedly said, is our purpose. It's a reason why we exist. It's a cause that you stand for. It's your belief that you hold dearly. It's a driving force behind everything that you do. And is it important? Yes, it is. I think one of the things that you had put up as a theme in this particular summit is to say, how can we as a youth play a bigger role in driving, things like governance, transformative leadership? And if you think about it, really, it does start with the foundations that we set ourselves. If we don't have a why, then I can tell you, I can bet 100% that the youth who will be coming in next will be the ones that will be having the same challenge. And that's my challenge. And I hope that the participants are really thinking and asking themselves, what does this mean for me? Am I clear? And if I was to be asked, do I know what my why is? The second aspect, of course, is, are you clear about the end in mind? Do you know where you want to be? As I said, if you look at the roadmap in life, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years from today, do you have a personal mission statement? Is it even a statement? Does it exist? Are you clear on what you want to be? What principles and values will you be anchored on? What contributions will you make in your time while alive? Now, why is it important to have a mission? It's more or less like having your own constitution. And I think in this time when we are talking about BBI, it's important to bear in mind that even before you jump into that is to ask yourself whether do you even have your own plan in life, your own constitution, your own principles and values that you want to believe you're going to be anchored upon. That's important because we cannot be transformative leaders if we ourselves don't have a clear purpose and a clear why, and we don't have values that we are anchored on. That is extremely important. The other thing, and again, for the participants, the way I've looked at this is to ask myself, at the age that I'm in, I'm in my mid-40s. If I was to be a youth today, what are the things that I would really want to remind myself that are very critical in shaping who I want to be and where I want to be? And I know some of us may have had this rule called the five rule. I mean, we call it 5 rule, but I think I like the fact that it's now been expanded to be 5 by 5 rule. And one of the things that this rule says is that you are not just an average of the 5 people around you. And let me emphasize, Every time you want to see who you are the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most of your time with. And that tells you how powerful the people that we spend time with are able to rub their characters, their habits, their beliefs, their behaviors onto us. And I think most of you have seen the news during this COVID period. We've had a lot of young people that have unfortunately been caught up in situations and have had to, their parents to be called on, be invited. And really, it is a true testimony that in the end, we are who we spend time with. But if you look at beyond that also, the truth is that you actually are an average of the 5 habits that you do, the 5 foods that you eat, the 5 ideas that you have, and the content that you consume. And that brings me to the point about where do you spend the most of your time? Of course, I've said clearly that who you spend time with matters. You have to make that decision to choose and be very cautious about who you give your time with. The most of your time that you spend will largely be shaped by the people that you spend it with. And I think one of the things we've been working on and speaking with a lot of the youth in mentorship is really choosing the right people to spend time with. It could make a difference in your life. And in some cases, sadly, as we've seen, it could also cost your life. The second thing now that I think is becoming very predominant in our time today is the social networks that you spend time with. We've seen that on average, if you estimate the amount of time that people spend on social media networks, so it could be on the digital space, and you cumulatively add it for their life, it does actually work out to be an amazing statistic. In fact, the last time I checked, it was totaling about 9 years. If you look at the amount of time that you spend every day, every week, every month, every year, and you multiply it by the amount of years that you will live, it is so significant. So where you spend your time in terms of the social networks is critical. And of course, in this case, I'm also hoping that you are not one of the people that end up getting addicted on the social networks, but not in a positive way. Because if you're using the networks to grow a business, to learn new skills, to be able to bond and get mentorship, that's entirely different. You have to be clear about where you're spending your time with. And the third point for me is never sacrifice what is most important for the least important. And as I said when we started actually this particular discussion, remember, wasted time is far much more worse than wasted money. You cannot get it back. Today, if you spend money on buying something that maybe you hadn't actually planned and it is down the drain, you can work hard and get the money. But that's not the same with time. The youth is the most important part of our life. And if you waste that time, you cannot be able to get it back. And I couldn't emphasize it more. The other thing that I think for me is very important as an anchoring habit that we need to develop is what mindset do we want to get into as we seek to be transformative leaders. We often teach people about the growth versus static mindset. And I want to remind the participants today that it's entirely up to you on what your choice will be. A growth mindset is anchored on the belief of continuous improvement. In growth mindset, you don't hide deficiencies, you overcome them. In growth mindset, you stretch out new possibilities. In growth mindset, you don't fear challenges, you don't see impossibilities. You merely accept where you are at the moment, but work towards improving to where you want to be. But unfortunately, our life is governed, and most people tend to live in a fixed mindset state. In a fixed mindset state, you believe that your qualities and capabilities are cast in stone. In a fixed mindset, you believe that there's little you can do to be able to change. In a fixed mindset, you believe that where you are born determines how your life will be. In a fixed mindset, you believe that because you didn't get the best grades in high school or in campus, you are unlikely to be successful in life. In a fixed mindset, you believe that you are exactly as what you have been taught. If I was to sum it up in a fixed mindset, you are merely in a cage and unable to be able to get out of that cage. So what mindset do we want to adopt, even as we think about the discussions we will have over the next few days? If you're shaping your life you must be very clear. And I can tell you for a fact that people that have been successful, by and large, have often had a growth mindset. And so are the organizations. So are businesses that tend to be successful. They tend to have a strong anchoring on a growth mindset. And I guess if you think about it, and what we've been saying here is that you need to be able to focus your time and energy on those things that grow you. You need to drop, avoid anything that will only weigh you down. And in order to drive change, we must be the change that we aspire. So, and I think we've emphasized today that you have to live with a purpose, integrity, and character, because that is exactly what forms a transformative leader. You cannot be a leader yourself if you cannot have the character that is required. As a youth, your future is in your hands, and it's what you do now that will determine your tomorrow. We must therefore prepare for that tomorrow today. And in order to change, we have to lead by changing our own beliefs and behaviors. And I think this is one of the most, unfortunately, transformative hindrances that has occurred in our youth today. Because on one hand, yes, we want to change, but we are not willing to change our beliefs. And unfortunately, behaviors are driven by beliefs. So unless you change your beliefs yourself, you will not be able to change your behaviors. And so in order to be a transformative leader, you have to remember that no leader has ever been able to drive transformation if their own personal life is not transformative. And so in order to be the change that we aspire as youth, it must begin with our personal transformation. And that is the ultimate truth. If you aspire to be a leader, you have to have a purpose, and I've said that. You have to adopt a growth mindset, and I've said that. You have to be willing to learn. You have to listen more and collaborate more. Leaders have to be people that listen more and talk less. Unfortunately, sometimes we tend to confuse that, and people that tend to talk a lot more have difficulty in understanding people. Sorry, I can see Gilbert. I think you need to lock on your screen. If you're aspiring to be a leader, you have to make the best use of time available. As I said, where you spend your time, who you spend your time with will determine who you will be. You're a sum total of actually those things that we have said. You have to embrace challenges, very similar to having a growth mindset. What you don't want is to live your life in a fixed mindset, is to be afraid to fail, is to waste your time because you will not get it back, is to seek short-term pleasure over fulfillment, and to lack a mentor. And those are things that I would encourage the participants today to also reflect upon themselves, because that's the only way that you can start the journey towards being a transformative leader. And in conclusion, I'd like to say that we are what we repeatedly do, and therefore excellence cannot be an act that we do it once, but a habit. And I think, David, as I hand over back to you, I'd like to encourage our participants here that draw a roadmap of your life. Be very clear about your purpose, your mission in your life. Know exactly what your why is, and that's what you want to live and share every single day. But above all, as I said, embrace a growth mindset. It will ultimately change your perspective in life and will contribute towards a success as a transformative leader that all of us aspire to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. It's amazing because the main critical thing that we have to acknowledge is it is upon us as individuals, as young people, to adopt a growth mindset. Because at the end of the day, we see the challenges that are in our society, we see things that we need to improve on. And the question is for us to make that transition, for us to get to a point where we can make a difference, we have to adopt a growth mindset and see how we can improve on them. And that's a very critical thing. So maybe I'll just give the participants a moment to ask some of the questions. You can use the chat box, then Newton will respond to them before we move to the next presentations.